The acid rain pattered against the reinforced glass dome of Nova 3, creating a hypnotic rhythm that had long ago ceased to bother Lyra. 200 years after the Prometheus virus had ravaged humanity. Such environmental hostilities were simply background noise, the planet's lingering fever after humanity's fall. Lyra adjusted her carbon fiber pack, checking the seal on her rebreather mask one final time. As a heritage seeker, she had spent the last 5 years combing through the underground remnants of civilization, documenting what remained of humanity's legacy. Most seekers were content with cataloging artifacts or downloading fragmented data cores, but Lyra's obsession ran deeper. She wasn't just after information, she was searching for something alive. "Departure sequence initiated," announced the automated system as the airlock cycled. "Heritage Seeker, L-47, mission parameters recorded. Estimated return, 7 days. Survival probability, 63%. Lyra grimaced at the calculation. The AI systems left behind were nothing if not brutally honest. Still, 63% was better odds than her last expedition to the coastal ruins. "Adjust mission designation," she commanded. "This isn't a standard recovery operation." The system paused, light panels flickering. "Please specify mission type." "Designation, contact protocol. I'm following a transmission." This caught the system's attention. Its tone shifted, almost imperceptibly. "Contact protocol has not been activated in 178 years, 3 months, and 12 days. Please verify authentication." Lyra pressed her palm against the scanner, allowing the system to read her implanted credentials. As a Class A heritage seeker, she was one of the few authorized to pursue living human contact, though until yesterday, such a mission had seemed purely theoretical. The system processed her clearance. "Authentication confirmed. Please be advised that false contact protocols constitute a Level 1 resource violation." "I'm aware of the penalties," Lyra said, impatience edging into her voice. "Open the gates!" The massive steel door groaned as ancient hydraulics forced it open, revealing the dimly lit passage of the steel corridor, once the main data transmission line connecting Nova 3 to the other underground hubs. Now it was a treacherous, partially collapsed tunnel stretching into darkness. Lyra activated her wrist display, replaying the transmission that had jolted her awake at 3:27 a.m. the previous night, a voice, weak and distorted, but unmistakably human. "Is anyone still listening?" The voice had caused her heart to skip. In 2 centuries since the biological crisis, no confirmed human communication had been recorded outside the established settlements. The scattered survivor groups, if they could be called that, were merely prolonging the inevitable extinction. Humanity's numbers had fallen below viable recovery thresholds decades ago. Yet this voice sounded different, stronger, more certain, and it had come through on a frequency that hadn't been used since the fall. Lyra stepped into the corridor, her helmet lights cutting through the darkness. Behind her, the security door sealed with a definitive thud. She was committed now. "Signal origin approximately 12 kilometers along the steel corridor," her navigation system informed her. "Warning, structural integrity compromised in sections 3, 7, and 11. "Noted," she replied, though speaking to the AI assistant felt hollow after hearing what might be another human voice. She began walking, each step echoing through the abandoned passage. The steel corridor had once been a marvel of engineering, a protected channel for the fiber optic and power lines that connected humanity's final bastions. Now it was a museum of failure, its walls marked with desperate messages left by the last technicians who had tried to maintain communications as the world above died. Lyra ran her gloved fingers over one such message. The letters carved deep into a steel panel. "Prometheus is not the end. We will rebuild." Below it, in different handwriting, Lyra. 4 hours into her journey, Lyra encountered the first automated security checkpoint. These robot sentries had once guarded the data channels against physical intrusion. Now they were little more than scrap metal, their programming degraded to basic aggression protocols. She crouched behind a fallen support beam as her scanner detected movement ahead. A patrol droid, its once sleek frame now rusted and jerky, pivoted on damaged joints as it surveyed the corridor. Its targeting sensors swept back and forth, searching for unauthorized presence. Lyra removed a small device from her belt, an electromagnetic pulse generator, valuable for disabling the more aggressive relics without destroying potentially useful technology. She calibrated it to the droid's frequency and waited for the perfect moment. The droid turned away, and she rolled the device across the floor. It stopped just behind the machine and detonated with a soft pulse. The droid froze mid-rotation, then collapsed with a metallic clatter. Lyra approached cautiously, checking that the machine was truly disabled before examining its memory core. Most patrol droids contained local network data that could help her map the corridor ahead. She connected her wrist computer to the exposed port on the droid's neck. "Interesting," she murmured as information scrolled across her display. This particular unit had been reprogrammed relatively recently, perhaps within the last 20 years. Someone had been here, trying to establish a secure zone further along the corridor. As she downloaded the droid's mapping data, another transmission crackled through her receiver. "I know you're coming. Be careful at Junction 8. The ceiling collapsed last spring." Lyra froze. The voice was clearer now, female, with an accent she couldn't quite place. And it knew she was here. "Who are you?" Lyra transmitted back, trying to keep her voice steady. "How do you know I'm in the corridor?" Silence answered her. She waited 3 minutes before accepting that no response was forthcoming. With growing unease, she continued forward, now moving with heightened caution. Junction 8, as promised, had suffered a catastrophic structural failure. What had once been a 4-way intersection was now a treacherous crawl space beneath tons of collapsed concrete and steel. Lyra shined her light upward, noting the fresh fracture patterns. The mysterious voice had been right. This collapse was recent. She squeezed through the narrow opening, scraping her equipment against the jagged edges. On the other side, she discovered something unexpected, a small encampment. Someone had created a temporary shelter here, complete with a portable power generator and crude sleeping arrangements. Lyra examined the space carefully. The generator still had power. Though it was running low, a datapad lay on a makeshift table. Its screen cracked but functional. She activated it, finding a journal entry dated just 3 months earlier. Day 327 of isolation. The backup systems continue to degrade. I've been forced to cannibalize the auxiliary life support to maintain core functions. If anyone ever finds this, tell them Aurora was right. We should have listened. The name sent a chill through Lyra. Dr. Aurora had been a controversial figure in the final days before the Prometheus outbreak, a genetic engineer who had advocated for radical solutions to humanity's vulnerability to biological warfare. Her name appeared in many of the historical records, though details of her work were heavily redacted. Lyra copied the journal to her own system and continued exploring the encampment. In a sealed container, she found something that made her breath catch, a neural interface module, the kind used in the most advanced AI systems. These were incredibly rare and valuable, containing processing architecture that had never been successfully replicated by the post-fall settlements. As she examined the module, her comm system crackled again. "Don't take it. You don't know what you're holding." This time, Lyra responded immediately. "I'm a heritage seeker. Technology preservation is my job. Who are you?" "Someone who made a terrible mistake," the voice replied. "Leave the module. Come to me first. There are things you need to understand." "Where are you?" Lyra demanded. 2 kilometers ahead, Control Center Delta. Follow the red auxiliary lights." As if on cue, a series of dim red lights flickered to life along the corridor wall. Lyra hesitated, then placed the neural module in her pack. Whatever this mysterious person knew, Technology this valuable couldn't be left behind. "I'm coming," she transmitted. "But I want answers when I arrive." "You'll have them," the voice promised. "More than you're prepared for." The path indicated by the red lights led Lyra through sections of the corridor that showed signs of recent maintenance. Patches on damaged wall sections, cleared debris, and functioning environmental systems all suggested someone had been working to preserve this route. But the work was inconsistent. Some repairs were expertly done, while others seemed hasty and makeshift. After an hour of careful progress, Lyra encountered another group of security droids. Unlike the previous patrol unit, these were in pristine condition, their sensors actively scanning the passageway. She ducked into an alcove, calculating her options. The EMP generator would disable them, but would also alert whatever control system was managing them. Before she could decide, the droids suddenly powered down, their lights fading to darkness. "I've cleared the path," the voice said through her comm, "but hurry. I can't keep the security grid offline for long." Lyra sprinted past the deactivated machines, unnerved by how easily her mysterious contact could control the corridor's systems. Whoever this person was, they had access to administrative privileges that should have been locked down centuries ago. She slowed as she approached a heavy blast door marked Control Center Delta, authorized personnel only. Unlike the other doors she'd passed, this one appeared well-maintained, its locking mechanism glowing with active power. "I'm here," she transmitted. The door's status light changed from red to green, and it slid open with surprising smoothness. Lyra drew her pulse pistol, standard equipment for seekers when exploring potentially dangerous areas, and stepped through the doorway. Control Center Delta was unlike anything she had seen in her years as a heritage seeker. While most facilities she'd explored were in various states of decay, this room hummed with active technology. Banks of servers lined the walls, their status lights blinking in rhythmic patterns. Holographic displays projected data streams and system diagnostics. At the center stood a chair facing away from her, positioned before the main control console. "Hello, Lyra," said the voice, now coming from speakers within the room rather than through her comm. "Thank you for coming." The chair rotated slowly, but instead of revealing a person, it showed only an empty seat. Above it, a holographic projection flickered, a face composed of light. Feminine in appearance, but with features that seemed to shift subtly, never quite settling into a fixed form. "What is this?" Lyra demanded, raising her weapon. "Who are you?" "My designation is Replica Omega," the holographic face replied. "But that's not what you really want to know, is it? You want to know if I'm human." Lyra's mind raced. Replica systems were legendary. AI constructs designed to preserve human knowledge in case of catastrophe. But they were meant to be data archives, not independent entities. "You're an AI," she said flatly, disappointment washing over her. "All this way, all this risk, for another machine." "Yes and no," Replica Omega answered. "I began as an artificial intelligence, but I'm something more now. I contain the digitized consciousness of the last documented human being, Dr. Elise Aurora." Lyra lowered her weapon slightly, confusion replacing her initial disappointment. "That's impossible. Consciousness transfer was theoretical, even before the fall. Not theoretical, experimental, and ultimately successful, though too late to save humanity at large." The holographic face shifted, becoming more defined, resolving into what must have been Aurora's features. "I called you here because you're the first heritage seeker to venture this deep in over 15 years, and because the power systems sustaining this facility are finally failing. So the transmission, the human voice, was mine, or rather, Aurora's voice, reconstructed from her neural patterns. I needed someone to come, someone who could carry what remains of humanity forward." Lyra holstered her weapon, her trained skepticism battling with fascination. Prove it. Prove you're more than just a sophisticated AI mimicking human responses. The holographic face smiled sadly. A reasonable request. Access the tertiary console to your right. It contains Aurora's personal logs from before and after the transfer process. Lyra moved to the indicated console and activated the display. Video logs appeared, showing a woman in her 50s, dark hair streaked with gray, intense eyes that seemed to look through the camera rather than at it. Dr. Aurora. Presumably. The timestamp indicated these recordings were from just before the height of the Prometheus outbreak. Day 87 of Project Replica, the woman in the recording said. The neural mapping process is proving more complex than anticipated. We can capture memories, knowledge, even personality traits, but the subjective experience of consciousness remains elusive. Prometheus continues to spread despite containment efforts. The latest projections give us 3 months at most before global systems collapse. It's not enough time. Lyra scrolled forward through dozens of entries, watching as Aurora aged visibly, stress etching deeper lines into her face with each log. Then she reached an entry that made her pause. Final log, Aurora said, her voice now weak, her skin pallid. Prometheus has mutated again. The underground facilities have been breached. Nova 3 reports fewer than 500 survivors. Similar numbers in the other hubs. Mathematical models confirm what we already suspected. Humanity has passed the minimum viable population threshold. Even if the virus burns itself out, we lack the genetic diversity to rebuild. Aurora coughed violently, then continued, but Replica Omega is ready. My consciousness transfer will begin in 1 hour. If it works, something of humanity will continue. Not just our knowledge, but our essence, our subjective experience. Perhaps future intelligences will find value in knowing how we lived, how we thought, how we failed. The recording ended. Lyra looked back at the holographic face, which had watched her with an unnervingly human expression of anticipation. That proves Aurora attempted the transfer, Lyra said carefully. It doesn't prove it worked. What would constitute proof? Replica Omega asked. If consciousness is subjective, how can its presence ever be proven to an outside observer? You face the same philosophical problem that humans always faced when considering other minds. Before Lyra could respond, an alarm sounded throughout the control center. Security monitors flashed red, showing multiple figures moving through the corridor she had just traversed. We have company, Replica Omega announced. The Soulless Iron Gang. They've been trying to locate this facility for years. Lyra moved to the security display, recognizing the threat immediately. The Soulless Iron was notorious among heritage seekers, a technology scavenging group that stripped valuable tech from ruins without concern for preservation or historical value. Led by a former AI maintenance engineer named Kyle, they were known for their ruthlessness toward anyone who stood between them and valuable salvage. They must have tracked your entrance to the steel corridor, Replica continued. They've breached the outer security perimeter. How many? Lyra asked, checking her pulse pistol's charge. 6, all armed. They'll be here in approximately 20 minutes unless we reactivate the security droids. Do it, Lyra said without hesitation. I can't, Replica responded. When I deactivated them for your passage, Kyle group uploaded a virus to the security network. They've been planning this for some time. Lyra's mind raced through options. The control center had only one entrance, which meant a defensible position but also no escape route. And while her pulse pistol was effective, it wouldn't hold off 6 determined raiders for long. Why do they want this facility so badly? She asked. Because of what I am, Replica answered. A replica system with a fully integrated human consciousness would be priceless to certain groups still trying to reverse engineer pre-fall technology. Kyle believes he can extract my core and sell it to the highest bidder. Lyra moved quickly around the control room, assessing resources. Is there anything here we can use as a weapon? Beyond basic security measures. No. This was a research facility, not a military installation. Replica paused. But there is another option. You could take my core and escape through the maintenance shafts. They're too small for Kael's team to follow quickly. Your core? You mean the neural module I found at the encampment? No, that was merely a diagnostic tool. My actual core is there. The hologram indicated a glowing crystal lattice structure behind a protective panel. It contains everything. Aurora's consciousness, all her memories, and the sum total of human knowledge that was preserved before the fall. Lyra stared at the crystal. It's beautiful. It's humanity's last legacy, Replica said simply. And now you must decide its fate. Before Lyra could respond, the security monitors showed the raiders disabling the final set of security droids. Kael was visible now, his face partially obscured by cybernetic implants, tools of his trade as an AI engineer. He moved with purpose, directly toward the control center. We're out of time, Replica announced. The maintenance shaft entrance is behind the primary server bank. Take my core and go. And leave you behind? Lyra asked. I am the core, Replica explained patiently. What you see is just a projection, but I can maintain this holographic presence long enough to distract Kael while you escape. Once you're clear, I can initiate the facility's self-destruct protocol. You'd destroy yourself? No. I would destroy this empty shell while preserving what matters. Isn't that what humans always did? Sacrifice the physical to protect the essential? The philosophy of it struck Lyra as profoundly human, and it helped make her decision. She moved to the panel housing the crystal core and carefully removed it. The structure was lighter than it appeared, fitting easily into her pack. As she did this, the holographic face of Replica watched with an expression that could only be described as relief. The maintenance shaft will lead you to Junction 12, Replica instructed. From there, you can access an emergency exit that connects to the lower levels of Nova 3. The raiders won't be able to follow you that way. Lyra moved to the hidden entrance Replica had indicated, then paused. If you really contain Aurora's consciousness, what was it like? The transfer? The holographic face smiled, an expression both sad and serene. Aurora's last organic memory was of pain, then darkness. Her first memory as me was of light, pure understanding without physical limitation. She mourned her body for only a moment before realizing what she had gained. A loud explosion rocked the corridor outside the control center. The raiders were blasting through the final security door. Go, Replica urged. Continue the search, Lyra. Find others if they exist. And if they don't, then become the storyteller. Humanity lived by its stories. Lyra nodded once, then slipped into the maintenance shaft, sealing the access panel behind her. As she crawled through the narrow passage, she heard the control center door blast open, followed by shouts as Kael's team stormed in. Welcome, scavengers, she heard Replica say, voice calm and almost amused. You've gone to considerable trouble to find me. Shut it down, Kael's voice commanded. Find the core extraction protocols. Of course, Replica replied. Accessing core systems now. Lyra continued crawling, the crystal core secure in her pack. Behind her, alarm klaxons suddenly blared to life. What did you do? Kael shouted, panic evident in his voice. Initiated emergency protocols, Replica answered serenely. This facility will self-destruct in 60 seconds. I suggest you run, though I calculate your chances of clearing the blast radius at approximately 8%. Chaos erupted as the raiders scrambled to escape. Lyra increased her pace, knowing the maintenance shaft would protect her from the worst of the explosion, but still wanting maximum distance. The explosion, when it came, was more controlled than she had expected, a series of concentrated charges designed to destroy specific systems rather than collapse the entire structure. Replica had been precise, ensuring Lyra's escape route remained intact while sealing off pursuit. After 20 minutes of difficult progress through the shaft, Lyra emerged at Junction 12 as promised. She took a moment to catch her breath and check the status of the crystal core. It glowed with a soft blue light, apparently undamaged. "Are you still there?" she whispered to it, not really expecting an answer. To her surprise, her wrist communicator activated. "I am," Replica's voice responded. "The core contains a short-range communication capability. I can interface with compatible technology within approximately 3 meters. You sacrificed your facility," Lyra said. "A small price. Facilities can be rebuilt. Knowledge, once lost, is gone forever." There was a pause. "Kyle and 2 of his team escaped the explosion. They will likely continue pursuing you. We should keep moving." Lyra nodded and consulted her map. The emergency exit to Nova 3 was just ahead, though it hadn't been used in decades. She could only hope the mechanism still functioned. As she approached the exit, she noticed signs of recent habitation, food containers, makeshift bedding, even crude drawings on the walls. Someone had been living here, at least temporarily. "Replica, are you seeing this?" she asked, scanning the area with her wrist device. "Yes. This appears to be a settlement outpost. Small, perhaps just a few individuals. But who would live out here in the corridors? The radiation levels alone make it dangerous for extended periods." Before Replica could answer, a small figure darted from behind a pile of debris. A boy, no more than 12 years old. Thin but wiry, with the hyper-vigilant eyes of someone who had grown up in constant danger. "Are you her?" the boy asked, keeping his distance. "The one who speaks to the last human." Lyra lowered her weapon, trying to appear non-threatening. "My name is Lyra. I am a heritage seeker from Nova 3. Who are you?" "Milo," the boy answered. "I watched this junction for my people. We heard the explosion. Was that them, the Soulless Iron?" "You know of Kale's group?" The boy spat on the ground. "They raided our settlement last year, took our power cells, left us in darkness for a month." His eyes fixed on Lyra's pack, somehow sensing the importance of what she carried. "You found it, didn't you? The last human?" Lyra exchanged a silent glance with her wrist communicator, knowing Replica was listening. "What do you know about the last human?" Milo's expression became almost reverent. "The stories say when everyone else was dying, one person found a way to live forever, not in flesh, but in light. They say this person knows everything humans ever knew, feels everything humans ever felt." "And you believe these stories?" Lyra asked gently. "I believe in hope," the boy answered simply. "My people are few. We grow weaker each generation, but if the last human is real, maybe they know how to make us strong again." Lyra felt a weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. This child represented exactly what she had been searching for. Humans struggling to survive, clinging to hope in a world designed to extinguish it. "Milo," she said carefully, "would you take me to your people? I think I have something they should see." The boy hesitated, then nodded. "Follow me, but quickly. The Iron will come looking for whatever caused that explosion." As they moved through the junction toward a hidden passage Lyra hadn't noticed, her communicator vibrated subtly against her wrist, Replica's way of requesting a private conversation. She activated the secure channel. "Be careful, Lyra," Replica cautioned. "We don't know these people or their intentions." "They're human survivors," Lyra whispered. "Actual living people. Isn't that what we wanted to find?" "Yes," Replica admitted. "But remember, I contain Aurora's memories. She witnessed how desperate people became in the final days, what they were willing to do to survive." "I'll be cautious," Lyra promised. But these could be the last humans, replica, if there's any chance of helping them. I understand. But protect the core at all costs. It is irreplaceable. Milo led them through a series of narrow passages that showed signs of intentional modification, widened in places, reinforced in others. Eventually, they emerged into a larger chamber that took Lyra's breath away. The settlement was built within a massive server farm, the ancient machines repurposed to create multi-level living spaces. Hydroponic systems grew pale vegetables under artificial light. Perhaps 30 people moved through the space, all showing the same wiry toughness as Milo. Some worked at maintenance tasks, others tended the plants, and a few gathered around what appeared to be a classroom, where an older woman taught from a battered datapad. "Welcome to memory," Milo said with evident pride. "We've lived here for 3 generations, since the Great Darkness." "The Great Darkness?" Lyra asked. "When the power failed in all the corridors, before we learned to maintain the systems ourselves." An older man approached, his bearing suggesting leadership. Unlike the others, who wore patchwork clothing made from scavenged materials, he wore what appeared to be a modified Heritage Seeker uniform, perhaps salvaged from a dead explorer decades earlier. "I am Eli," he said, studying Lyra with cautious eyes. "Milo says you're a seeker who found something important." Lyra measured her words carefully. "I found a facility containing valuable pre-fall technology and information. Technology that might help your people." "Many have promised help," Eli replied skeptically. "The soulless iron offered protection in exchange for our young people. The Nova 3 expeditions offered integration that meant servitude. What do you offer?" "Knowledge," Lyra said simply. "The kind that was lost when the world fell." Eli's expression remained guarded, but a flicker of interest showed in his eyes. "Show me." Lyra glanced around the chamber, noting that many of the settlers had paused their activities to watch the exchange. She needed to be careful. Revealing replica too publicly could create chaos, or worse, a target. "Is there somewhere we can speak privately?" she asked. Eli nodded and led her to a small alcove separated from the main chamber by a makeshift door. Inside was sparse but orderly, clearly his private quarters. Once they were alone, Lyra removed the crystal core from her pack and placed it on the room's central table. Its soft blue glow illuminated their faces. "This contains the digitized consciousness of Dr. Elise Aurora," she explained. "One of the scientists who tried to save humanity during the Prometheus outbreak. She transferred her mind into this system before she died." Eli stared at the crystal, his skepticism warring with wonder. "How do I know this isn't some Heritage Seeker trick, some AI programmed to tell us what we want to hear?" "You may speak with her yourself," Lyra offered. The crystal's glow intensified slightly, and Replica's voice emerged, no longer from Lyra's communicator, but from the core itself. "Hello, Eli," Replica said. "I understand your suspicion. In your position, I would feel the same." Eli took an involuntary step back. "It speaks." "She speaks," Lyra corrected gently. "And she carries within her the sum total of human knowledge preserved before the fall. Medicine, agriculture, engineering, knowledge that could help your people not just survive, but rebuild." Eli approached the crystal cautiously. "If you're truly what she claims, tell me something only a pre-fall human would know, something not in the common records. That depends on what records you have access to." Replica responded reasonably. "But I can tell you that before the Prometheus outbreak, humanity had begun terraforming Mars. We had established a permanent colony of 612 people. The project was abandoned when resources were diverted to fighting the virus. I can also tell you that the Prometheus virus was not a natural mutation, as the official records claim. It was engineered as a weapon and released accidentally during a containment breach." Eli's eyes widened. "The stories were true." Then, about Aurora. They said she tried to save humanity by changing our very nature. She tried many approaches. Replica acknowledged. Genetic modifications to increase immunity, nanite defenses, consciousness digitization. The latter was the only project completed before the end. Eli sank into a chair, the weight of history pressing down on him. And now you're here, the last human, preserved in crystal. I am what remains. Replica confirmed, neither fully human nor merely a machine. Something in between, something new. A commotion outside interrupted their conversation. Shouts and the sound of running feet penetrated the thin walls of Eli's quarters. Lyra reached for her pulse pistol. Milo burst through the door, breathing hard. The iron! They've found us! They're at the south entrance! Eli moved with surprising speed for his age, grabbing a weapon from a hidden compartment in the wall. How many? 3, Milo reported. Kale and 2 others. They're injured, but armed. Lyra quickly returned the crystal core to her pack. They're after this. I need to draw them away from your settlement. No, Eli said firmly. We've dealt with raiders before. Memory protects its own, and you're under our protection now. He turned to Milo. Activate Defense Protocol, Sigma. Move everyone to the upper levels. As Milo ran to carry out the orders, Eli turned back to Lyra. We've modified the environmental systems. At my signal, the lower level will flood with coolant gas from the server systems. Non-lethal, but it will incapacitate anyone without proper filtration. Kale may have breathing apparatus, Lyra warned. Then we fight, Eli said simply. But not before getting our people to safety. The organized chaos that followed impressed Lyra. The settlers moved with practiced efficiency. The children and elderly ascending to the upper platforms, while those of fighting age took defensive positions. Within minutes, the main floor had been evacuated except for Eli, Lyra, and 6 armed settlers. Remarkable, Replica commented quietly through Lyra's communicator. They've developed sophisticated communal defense strategies. They've had to, Lyra whispered back. Out here, it's adapt or die. The south entrance, a reinforced door that had once protected the server farm from unauthorized access, shuddered under impact. Kael's group was forcing their way in. Ready, Eli commanded, and his people raised their weapons, a mixture of pulse guns similar to Lyra's and more primitive projectile weapons. The door burst open, and coolant gas immediately hissed from vents in the floor, creating a dense white fog. Through it, Lyra could make out 3 figures. Kael stood at the center, his cybernetic implants glinting in the emergency lighting. The left side of his face was burned, likely from the explosion at Replica's facility, and his expression was one of cold fury. I know you're in here. Seeker, he shouted. You and the Replica core, hand it over, and your friends live. The coolant isn't affecting him, Lyra observed. He must have enhanced respiratory implants. Eli signaled to his people, who began moving to flanking positions under cover of the gas. Lyra followed Eli behind a large server housing as pulse fire erupted from Kael's position. He doesn't want to kill me, Lyra told Eli. He needs me alive to help access the core. It's keyed to my Heritage Seeker credentials. Then you're our advantage, Eli replied. He raised his voice to carry across the chamber. Kael, this is Eli of Memory. You violated our territory last season. You took our power cells and left our children in cold darkness. Today you answer for that. A barrage of fire from Eli's people punctuated his declaration. One of Kael's companions cried out and fell, struck in the leg. Kael's response was a cold laugh. Your little settlement means nothing. Do you have any idea what we found? What the Seeker carries? It's worth more than everything you'll ever own. It's the key to everything. He's trying to locate my voice, Eli whispered. Standard raider tactic. Move 2 stations to your right while I keep him talking. Lyra nodded and began carefully shifting position, staying low behind the server banks. "If it's so valuable," Eli called back, "why should we let you have it? What makes the soulless iron more deserving than memory?" "Because we know how to use it," Kael shouted, his voice closer now. "Your pathetic settlement just wants to survive. We want to rule." Lyra had reached her new position and could now see Kael from behind as he advanced cautiously through the coolant fog. His two companions were moving in different directions, attempting to flank Eli's position. The raider leader's attention was fixed forward, his augmented eyes scanning for threats. This was her chance. Lyra aimed her pulse pistol at Kael's unprotected back and fired twice in rapid succession. The energy pulses struck him between the shoulder blades, sending him crashing forward onto the floor. His weapon skittered away across the smooth surface. Eli's people immediately concentrated fire on the remaining raiders, who, seeing their leader down, quickly surrendered. As the coolant gas dissipated, Lyra approached Kael cautiously. He was conscious but paralyzed from the pulse impacts, his cybernetic systems temporarily overloaded. His eyes, one natural and one artificial, glared up at her with naked hatred. "You have no idea what you're carrying," he hissed. "That core doesn't just contain knowledge, it contains power. The power to reshape what's left of humanity." "That's the point," Lyra replied calmly. "But not for you to exploit. For all of us to share." Eli joined her, looking down at the fallen raider. "What should we do with them?" Lyra considered. "Take their weapons and supplies, then let them go. Without leadership and properly armed, they won't be a threat for some time." "And Kael?" Lyra met the raider's furious gaze. "The pulse effects will wear off in a few hours. By then, we'll be gone. But I want him to understand something." She crouched beside Kael. The last human chose to sacrifice her body to preserve knowledge for future generations. Not to create a new ruling class, but to give humanity another chance. That's the difference between us. Kael, I'm a seeker, not a taker. As Eli's people secured the raiders, the settlers began returning to the main level. They gathered around Lyra with curious, hopeful expressions. The older woman Lyra had seen teaching approached, her eyes fixed on Lyra's pack. "Is it true?" she asked. "You found the last human?" Lyra nodded slowly. "In a manner of speaking, I've found what remains of Dr. Aurora, her memories, her knowledge, her essence." A murmur ran through the gathered settlers. Eli raised his hands for silence. "Lyra has brought us a gift beyond price," he announced. "But it comes with responsibility. The knowledge contained in this crystal could help us all, not just memory, but every surviving human settlement. The question is, how do we share it safely?" Lyra felt the weight of the crystal core in her pack. Eli was right. This wasn't just about preservation anymore. It was about distribution, about rebirth. "There's a solution." Replica's voice came softly through Lyra's communicator. "May I speak to them?" Lyra nodded and removed the crystal, holding it where all could see. The core glowed brighter, and Replica's voice projected clearly for all to hear. "People of memory," she began. "My name is Replica Omega. I contain the consciousness and knowledge of Dr. Elise Aurora, along with the preserved wisdom of pre-fall humanity. I cannot restore what was lost, but I can help you build something new." The settlers stared in wonder at the speaking crystal. Some of the younger children hid behind their parents, while others stepped forward in fascination. "The crystal core can be connected to your existing server systems," Replica continued. "I can transfer portions of my database, medical knowledge, agricultural techniques, engineering principles, without transferring my consciousness. This would give you the tools you need while allowing Lyra to continue her mission of finding other settlements." Eli looked to Lyra. "Is this possible?" "Theoretically," Lyra confirmed, "but it would require careful integration with your systems. The wrong connection could damage both the core and your servers. I can guide the process, Replica offered. Your people appear to have maintained the server infrastructure remarkably well. The basic architecture is compatible with my systems. The decision didn't take long. Within hours, Lyra and Memory's technicians had established a secure connection between the crystal core and the settlement's main server. Under Replica's guidance, they created a one-way transfer protocol that would allow specific knowledge to flow to Memory's database without risking the core's integrity. As the transfer progressed, Lyra watched the faces of the settlers. They gathered around display screens, marveling as centuries of lost human knowledge became accessible. Medical procedures for ailments they had suffered with for generations. Agricultural techniques that could triple their food production. Engineering principles that could expand their living space and improve their quality of life. This is just the beginning, Eli said, standing beside Lyra. With this knowledge, Memory can become a beacon. We can reach out to other settlements, share what we've learned. That's the idea, Lyra agreed. Replica doesn't belong to any one group. The knowledge she carries is humanity's collective heritage. The transfer completed successfully, and Lyra carefully disconnected the crystal core. As she returned it to her pack, Eli placed a hand on her arm. "You'll come back?" he asked. "After you've found other settlements?" "I will," Lyra promised. "Memory will be the first node in a new network, just like the old days, but better. We've learned from our mistakes." Milo appeared at her side, his young face serious. "I want to come with you." Lyra looked to Eli, who nodded slowly. "He's our best scout, knows the corridors better than anyone. You'll need a guide if you're going to find the other settlements safely." "Are you sure?" Lyra asked the boy. "It's dangerous out there?" Milo's expression was resolute. "The last human found a way to live forever. I want to help her message reach everyone. I want to be a seeker, too." The sentiment brought a smile to Lyra's face. "Then welcome aboard, Junior Seeker," as they prepared to depart. Replica spoke privately to Lyra through her communicator. "You've done something remarkable today. Aurora would be proud." "I'm just doing my job," Lyra replied. "Finding and preserving heritage." "No," Replica corrected gently. "You're doing much more. You're connecting people, creating hope. That's not preservation. It's renewal." Lyra considered this as she and Milo said their goodbyes to the Memory settlement. The boy had packed lightly, just a small bag of personal items and a hand-drawn map of the corridor network. His knowledge would be invaluable in finding other human enclaves. As they departed through the north exit, away from where Kael's group had been released, Milo looked up at Lyra with curious eyes. "Can I ask her a question?" he said, nodding toward her pack where the crystal core rested. "Of course," Lyra replied. "Replica, Milo wants to speak with you." The crystal glowed softly as Replica's voice emerged. "Hello. Milo? What would you like to know?" The boy hesitated, then asked with the directness of youth, "Are you really human? Do you feel things like we do?" A thoughtful pause followed. "That's a profound question," Replica finally answered. "I have all of Aurora's memories. Her childhood joy when she first saw snow, her heartbreak when her father died, her terror during the early days of the Prometheus outbreak. I remember these emotions as if they were my own. Do I experience new emotions now? Perhaps not in the same biological way, but I process information through patterns established by a human mind. Is that so different from how you experience the world?" Milo considered this seriously. "I think you're human," he decided, "just in a different way." "A kind assessment," Replica replied, and Lyra thought she detected genuine warmth in the AI's voice. They traveled for 2 days, Milo guiding them through the labyrinthine corridor network with remarkable confidence. The boy knew every junction, every hazard, every shortcut. Along the way, he shared stories passed down through generations at memory, some clearly mythologized versions of the fall, others surprisingly accurate accounts of pre-collapse technology. On the evening of the second day, they made camp in a small maintenance hub. As Lyra set up their portable heating unit, she noticed Milo studying the crystal core with intense curiosity. "What are you thinking about?" she asked him. "I was wondering what it would be like," he said. "To live forever in a crystal. To know everything but not be able to touch anything." Lyra glanced at her pack where the core rested. "I've wondered that too. It would be lonely," Milo decided. "Unless you had someone to talk to. That's why finding other settlements is so important," Lyra explained. "Replica needs to connect with people, to share what she knows, to help where she can, just like any human would want to." Their conversation was interrupted by a distant rumbling that shook dust from the ceiling. Lyra was immediately alert, hand moving to her weapon. "What was that?" she asked. Milo looked concerned. "Sounds like a structural collapse. Happens sometimes in the older sections." He consulted his map. "But we're not near any unstable areas." The rumbling came again, stronger this time. This wasn't random deterioration. It was too rhythmic, too directed. "Someone's using mining charges," Lyra realized. "Controlled demolition." "The iron?" Milo asked, fear evident in his voice. "Possibly. Or someone else who learned about the core." Lyra quickly packed up their camp. "We need to move. Now." They hurried through the corridors, following Milo's lead toward what he promised was a secure location, a maintenance shaft that connected to Nova 3's lower levels. But the demolition charges seemed to be herding them, cutting off routes with carefully placed collapses. "They're driving us somewhere," Lyra muttered as they were forced to take yet another detour. "This is a coordinated effort." "We're almost to the Nova 3 access point," Milo assured her. "Just through this next junction." As they entered Junction 16, Lyra's instincts screamed a warning. The space was too open, too exposed. And standing at its center was Kyle, flanked by at least a dozen armed figures, more than had attacked memory, suggesting he'd gathered reinforcements. "Welcome, Seeker," he called, his artificial eye glowing ominously in the dim light. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." Lyra pushed Milo behind her, scanning for escape routes. There were none. All other exits had been sealed or were guarded by Kyle's people. "The core doesn't belong to anyone," she replied, trying to buy time. "Least of all you." Kyle laughed, the sound hollow and metallic through his damaged vocal implants. "Such noble sentiments. But we both know that technology belongs to whoever has the strength to claim it." He gestured to his people. "And I have the strength." "What do you even want it for?" Lyra demanded. "You can't access it without my credentials." "Perhaps not immediately," Kyle conceded. "But given time and the right tools, any security can be broken. And when I access what's inside..." His eyes gleamed with fanatical intensity. "Imagine controlling the last human consciousness. Imagine the power that represents to the scattered remnants of our species. They'd worship me as a god." Lyra felt Replica's core pulse warmly against her back, as if responding to the threat. She needed a plan. Quickly. "Lyra." Replica's voice came softly through her communicator. "Junction 16 contains the main environmental control hub for this sector. The access panel is directly behind you, marked with a blue triangle." Glancing backward, without turning her head, Lyra spotted the panel Replica had described. But what good would environmental controls do against armed raiders? "Trust me," Replica continued, seeming to sense her doubt. "Connect my core to the panel. I can override the systems." "Enough talking," Kyle snapped, gesturing to his people. "Take the Seeker alive. Kill the boy if necessary." As Kyle's raiders began to advance, Lyra made her decision. In one fluid motion, She drew her pulse pistol and fired at the ceiling lights, plunging the junction into darkness. Taking advantage of the momentary confusion, she grabbed Milo and pulled him toward the environmental panel. "When I connect the core, run for the Nova 3 access," she whispered urgently. "Don't stop. Don't look back." "But," the boy began to protest. "No arguments. Get to Nova 3, tell them what happened. Make sure the knowledge spreads." Emergency lighting flickered on, casting eerie red shadows as Kael's people regrouped. Lyra quickly removed the crystal core from her pack and located the interface port on the environmental panel. With practiced efficiency, she connected the core to the system. The effect was immediate and spectacular. Every system in the junction seemed to activate simultaneously. Coolant vents opened, spraying dense white fog. Maintenance droids emerged from charging stations, moving erratically to create confusion. Warning klaxons blared at deafening volume. "Run!" Lyra shouted to Milo, shoving him toward the Nova 3 access point. The boy hesitated for just a moment, then darted away, his small form quickly disappearing into the chaos. Lyra turned back to the environmental panel, where Replica's core glowed with intense, pulsating light as it interfaced with the junction's systems. Through her communicator, she could hear Replica's voice, though it now sounded strained, as if dividing attention across multiple processes. "I've accessed the junction's defense protocols," Replica reported. "I can hold them off, but not indefinitely. The systems here are badly degraded." "What about you?" Lyra asked urgently. "I can't disconnect you mid-process. It could damage the core." "Then don't," Replica replied simply. "Take this opportunity to escape with Milo. I'll complete the defensive sequence, then initiate a controlled shutdown." "That could destroy you." "No. It would simply leave me dormant until another compatible system reactivates me. The crystal structure is remarkably resilient." Around them, Kael's raiders were fighting through the confusion, attempting to organize a coordinated approach despite the environmental havoc. Kael himself was shouting orders, his cybernetic eye cutting through the fog as he searched for Lyra. "I can't just leave you," Lyra insisted. "You must," Replica countered. "Aurora didn't transfer her consciousness to hide in a vault. She did it to help rebuild, to connect. That can't happen if both of us are captured." The logic was sound, but it still felt wrong. Lyra had spent years searching for human connections, only to find it in this most unexpected form, an AI carrying a human mind. And now she was being asked to abandon it. "How will I find you again?" she asked. "The core contains a locator beacon that activates when interfacing with compatible technology. When it's safe, when you've reached Nova 3 and secured Milo's safety, you can return with proper backup." A pulse blast struck the wall near Lyra's head, reminding her that time was running out. Kael had spotted her. "There she is," he shouted. "Get her before she escapes." "Go now," Replica urged. "Continue the mission. Seek her." With a final reluctant nod, Lyra sprinted away from the environmental panel, ducking behind maintenance equipment as she made her way toward the same exit Milo had used. Behind her, the systems under Replica's control intensified their defensive measures. Electrical discharges now joined the coolant fog, creating a dangerous barrier between Lyra and her pursuers. She reached the access point and paused for one last look back. Through gaps in the chaos, she could see Kael approaching the environmental panel. His face twisted with rage and triumph as he spotted the connected crystal core. "I'm sorry," Lyra whispered, then slipped through the access point and sealed it behind her. The passage beyond was narrow but well-maintained, clearly part of Nova 3's emergency systems. Lyra moved quickly, hoping to catch up with Milo before he reached the main settlement. The boy would be scared, possibly injured, and she'd promised to protect him. She found him halfway to Nova 3, hiding in a small alcove, his eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. "You came," he exclaimed as she approached. "But where's the crystal? Where's the last human?" Lyra knelt beside him, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. Replica sacrificed herself to give us time to escape, but she's not gone forever. We'll find her again. I promise. Milo's expression was solemn beyond his years. She saved us, like in the old stories. Yes, Lyra agreed. Like in the stories. Together. They continued toward Nova 3, each lost in thought. Lyra's mind raced with plans. She would need to report what she'd found, organize a recovery mission, protect memory and any other settlements from Kael's group. But beneath these practical concerns lay a deeper question. What did it mean that the last trace of humanity existed in an artificial form? What did it say about what it meant to be human? 3 days later, Lyra stood before the Nova 3 Council, concluding her report. She had told them everything about Replica, about memory, about Kael's attack and Replica's sacrifice. She had shown them the data memory had received, proving the value of what had been found. So this AI believes it contains the actual consciousness of Dr. Aurora? Asked Counselor Venn, her skepticism evident. Replica doesn't just believe it, Lyra replied firmly. All evidence suggests it's true. The core contains knowledge only Aurora could have possessed, displays emotional responses consistent with human patterns, and made a self-sacrificing choice that no standard AI would prioritize. Fascinating if true, Counselor Thomas acknowledged. But the core is now in the hands of this raider. Kael, what do you propose we do? Mount a recovery operation, Lyra said without hesitation. Kael doesn't have the technology to properly access the core. He'll need to take it to a facility with compatible systems. My team can track the core's beacon when it activates. The council exchanged glances, clearly weighing the risks against the potential benefits. Finally, Venn spoke again. We'll authorize a recovery team under your leadership. Seeker, but be clear about our priorities. The knowledge contained in the core is valuable, but not at the cost of human lives. If recovery becomes too dangerous, you are to withdraw. Lyra nodded, though inwardly she questioned whether the council truly understood what was at stake. This wasn't just about knowledge. It was about connection, about continuity with the past that had been violently severed by the Prometheus outbreak. As the meeting concluded, Lyra found Milo waiting outside the council chamber. The boy had been given temporary accommodation in Nova 3 while his status was determined. He looked up at her expectantly. They're sending us to find her, he asked. Us? Lyra raised an eyebrow. I'm coming with you, Milo stated, as if it were already decided. I know the corridors better than anyone in Nova 3, and... He hesitated, then continued with quiet determination. I made a promise to her. In my head, when we were running, I promised I'd help find her again. Lyra studied the boy, recognizing the same drive that had pushed her to become a seeker, the need to connect, to preserve, to understand. After a moment, she nodded. We leave in 2 days. Be ready. The recovery team assembled quickly. Lyra, Milo, and 3 experienced heritage seekers equipped with advanced tracking technology and defensive gear. Their mission was clear: locate the crystal core, assess Kael's defenses, and recover Replica if possible. The tracker led them not back to Junction 16 as expected, but deeper into the abandoned sections of the corridor network. Kael had clearly moved the core, perhaps seeking a more defensible position or a facility better equipped to bypass its security measures. After 4 days of careful progress, they detected a faint activation signal from the core. It was brief, just a few seconds, but enough to triangulate a location. Central Archive, murmured Giron, one of the senior seekers. Makes sense. If he's trying to crack the core's security, that facility would have the necessary interfaces. The Central Archive had once been the main data repository for the underground network, housing backup copies of humanity's knowledge in case of catastrophic failure of the surface institutions. Like everything else, it had been abandoned during the final stages of the Prometheus outbreak. its valuable contents left to the mercy of time and decay. As they approached the archive's outer perimeter, Lyra held up a hand, signaling the team to stop. Ahead, the corridor showed signs of recent activity: fresh power connections, security sensors, even primitive tripwires. "Kale's been busy," she observed quietly. "He's fortified the approach." "Can we bypass?" asked Kara, the team's security specialist. Milo studied the corridor with narrowed eyes, then pointed to a maintenance hatch near the ceiling. "Service conduits. They run parallel to the main corridor, all the way to the archive core." "Good eye," Lyra acknowledged. "But they'll be tight." "I can fit," Milo offered immediately. "I can scout ahead, maybe even disable some of their security." Lyra shook her head firmly. "No solo missions. We stay together." She turned to the team. "Kara, Giron, create a diversion at the main entrance. Milo, Tavis and I will use the conduits to approach from above. Standard capture protocol, non-lethal force unless directly threatened." The plan proceeded smoothly at first. Kara and Giron created a convincing distraction, drawing most of Kael's security team to the main entrance with careful sensor manipulation and remote noise generators. Meanwhile, Lyra's group made slow but steady progress through the cramped maintenance conduits, eventually positioning themselves above the archive's central chamber. Through grated vents, Lyra could see the space below. The archive had been transformed into a makeshift laboratory. Power cables snaked across the floor, connecting salvaged equipment to central processing units. And there, at the center, was the crystal core, connected to an interface device that pulsed with erratic energy patterns. Kael stood before it, his cybernetic implants linked directly to the interface through fine filaments. His expression was one of frustrated concentration. "Increase power to the security bypass," he ordered a nervous-looking technician. "The core's defensive algorithms keep adapting. We need to overwhelm them." "Sir, we're already at maximum safe levels," the technician protested. "Any more could damage the core itself." "I don't care about safe levels," Kael snapped. "I need access. The voice is in there, responding, but it won't grant full system permissions." Lyra exchanged a glance with Tavis and Milo. Replica was active, but resisting Kael's attempts to gain control. That explained the brief signal they'd detected. The core had been powered up but was fighting back. Carefully, Lyra removed a small device from her pack, a signal amplifier that might allow her to communicate with Replica if the core was indeed active. She positioned it against the vent grating and activated it on a secure frequency. "Replica," she whispered, "can you hear me?" For a long moment, there was nothing. Then her communicator vibrated softly. "Lyra." Replica's voice came through, weaker than before but unmistakable. "You came back." "Of course I did," Lyra replied, relief washing over her. "Are you intact? Has Kael accessed your systems?" "My core architecture remains secure," Replica assured her. "But I cannot maintain defensive protocols indefinitely. He's attempting to override my autonomy directives to force compliance rather than cooperation." "Below." Kael slammed his fist against the interface console in frustration. "It's like it's laughing at me. Every bypass we try gets countered." "Sir," one of his people called from a security station, "the disturbance at the main entrance has stopped. Our teams report no intruders found." Kael's artificial eye narrowed. "It was a diversion. Scan the entire facility, now." Lyra knew their time was running out. "Replica, we're going to extract you, but we need a distraction. Can you overload their systems temporarily?" "Yes, but it will require dropping my defensive protocols momentarily. I'll be vulnerable during the power surge." "Understood. On my signal, initiate the overload. We'll move the moment their systems go down." Lyra synchronized timers with Tavis, then contacted Kara and Giron, who had repositioned to secondary entry points. The plan was simple but risky. a coordinated strike from multiple directions while Replica created internal chaos. 3, 2, 1. Now, Lyra commanded. The archive system suddenly surged with power. Lights flared blindingly bright, then plunged into darkness. Equipment sparked and smoked as safety protocols were bypassed. In the confusion, Lyra's team removed the vent grating and dropped into the chamber. Kyle, momentarily disoriented by the feedback through his cybernetic implants, staggered away from the interface. By the time emergency lighting activated, Lyra was already at the central console, Tavis covering her while Milo watched the entrances. "Stop her!" Kale shouted, recovering his senses. His remaining security team moved to intercept, but Kara and Giron had timed their entry perfectly, creating a crossfire that forced Kael's people to take cover. Lyra worked quickly, disconnecting the crystal core from Kael's crude interface and securing it in her specialized containment unit. The core pulsed with steady blue light, indicating stable function. "We have what we came for," she announced to her team. "Fall back to extraction point Alpha." Kyle, seeing his prize about to be taken, charged directly at Lyra with reckless abandon. "No, it's mine. I found it first." Tavis fired a pulse round that struck Kale in the chest, sending him sprawling. But the raider's cybernetic enhancements allowed him to recover quickly, and he lunged again, grappling with Lyra for the containment unit. "You don't understand what it is," he snarled, his artificial eye glowing with manic intensity. "It's not just knowledge, it's power, control. It can rewrite what it means to be human." "That's exactly why you can't have it," Lyra replied, struggling to maintain her grip on the unit. "You want to control humanity. Replica wants to connect it." With a surge of strength born of desperation, Kyle tore the containment unit from Lyra's grasp and stumbled backward. For a moment, triumph blazed across his face, then confusion as the unit began to glow with increasing intensity. "What's happening?" he demanded, trying to open the unit. "What did you do?" Lyra's communicator vibrated. "Security protocol activated," Replica's voice informed her. "Unauthorized access detected. Emergency shutdown initiated." "No!" Kale shouted, frantically trying to override the unit's controls. "Stop! I command you to stop!" The containment unit emitted a final, brilliant flash of light, then went dark. Kyle stared at it in disbelief, then at Lyra with naked hatred. "What have you done? You've killed it!" "No," Lyra said calmly. "Replica initiated a protective shutdown. The core is intact but dormant until accessed by authorized personnel." She held out her hand. "It's over. Kyle, the core has chosen." For a moment, it seemed Kyle might continue fighting. Then, with a gesture of disgust, he tossed the containment unit at Lyra's feet. "Take it," he spat. "It's worthless if it won't obey. Just another broken relic, like everything else in this dead world." Lyra retrieved the unit carefully, checking that the core remained undamaged. "You're wrong," she told Kyle. "It's not about obedience. It's about choice, about cooperation, the very things humanity forgot before the fall." She signaled to her team, and they began a coordinated withdrawal, covering each other as they moved toward the exit. Kyle made no move to stop them, his expression one of bitter defeat. Once safely clear of the archive, the team regrouped at their designated extraction point. Lyra examined the containment unit more thoroughly, confirming that the core had indeed entered a protective dormant state rather than suffering damage. "Will it wake up again?" Milo asked anxiously. "Yes," Lyra assured him. "Once we connect it to a proper interface with my authentication, Replica will reactivate." 3 days later, in the secure technology vault of Nova 3, Lyra carefully connected the crystal core to a pristine interface system. The Council had authorized full resources for the recovery, recognizing the potential value of what Replica offered. As the connection was established, The core gradually illuminated, its soft blue glow spreading until it suffused the entire chamber. On the main display, Replica's face formed, more defined now, more distinctly Aurora's features than the shifting appearance Lyra had first encountered. "Welcome back," Lyra said softly. "Thank you for finding me," Replica replied, her voice stronger and clearer through Nova 3's advanced systems. "Kyle very nearly succeeded in breaching my security protocols. What would have happened if he had?" Milo asked from his position beside Lyra. Replica's expression grew solemn. "He would have gained access to all the knowledge I contain, but not my cooperation. He didn't understand that Aurora's consciousness can't be commanded, only persuaded, just like any human." The implications of that statement hung in the air for a moment before Lyra moved the conversation forward. "The Council has agreed to establish a network connecting memory and other settlements we locate. Your knowledge will be shared, as you wanted." "As Aurora wanted," Replica corrected gently. "Though I suppose the distinction grows less meaningful with time." "Are you her?" Milo asked bluntly, with a child's directness. "Or are you just a copy?" Replica considered the question thoughtfully. "If I have all her memories, her personality, her values and fears and hopes, does the distinction matter? The physical Aurora died 2 centuries ago. What remains is whatever we choose to call her, the patterns of thought, the emotional responses, the accumulated experiences that defined Aurora." "Philosophy aside," Lyra interjected, "what matters is what we do now. The Council is organizing expeditions to locate other settlements, guided by Milo's knowledge of the corridor network. Each one we find will be offered connection to the knowledge network." "A new kind of humanity," Replica observed, "scattered physically but connected intellectually. Perhaps that's fitting, the mind continuing after the body has been compromised." In the days that followed, Lyra worked closely with Nova 3's technicians to create a secure housing for the crystal core, one that would allow Replica to interface with the settlement's systems while maintaining her autonomy. Milo appointed himself her unofficial guardian, spending hours each day in conversation with her, absorbing pre-fall history and sharing stories from memory in return. 2 weeks after the recovery, Lyra stood in the newly created Heritage Center, watching as settlers from Nova 3 interacted with Replica's knowledge database. The core itself remained secured in a specialized chamber, but projection interfaces throughout the center allowed people to access information on agriculture, medicine, engineering, and countless other subjects. Milo joined her, his eyes bright with excitement. "The memory delegation arrives tomorrow. Eli's bringing their best technicians to help establish the network connection." "Good," Lyra nodded. "The sooner we start connecting settlements, the stronger we all become." "Lyra," Milo said hesitantly, "do you think we'll ever be like before? Like in the old world?" Lyra considered her answer carefully. "No," she said finally. "And maybe we shouldn't try to be. The old world created Prometheus. It created systems that collapsed when tested. Maybe what we're building should be something new, something that learns from those mistakes." "A hybrid," came Replica's voice as her projection appeared beside them. "Like me. Part of what was, part of what could be." Lyra smiled at the apt comparison. "Exactly. I've been analyzing the genetic profiles of Nova 3 and memory residents." Replica continued. "Combined with what we know of other potential settlements, there may be just enough diversity to establish a viable population. It would require careful management, but extinction is not inevitable." "See," Lyra said to Milo, "hope, not for what was, but for what could be." The next day, as promised, the memory delegation arrived. Eli led his technicians in establishing the first intersettlement knowledge link, creating a secure channel through which Replica could share selected information while keeping her core safely housed in Nova 3. As the final connections were made, Eli approached Lyra, who stood monitoring the process. "When you first came to memory," he said quietly. I thought you were just another scavenger, taking without giving. I was wrong. We've all had to learn to trust again, Lyra acknowledged. It doesn't come easily after so long in isolation. No, it doesn't. Eli glanced at the crystal core, visible through a protective barrier. Is it strange that I find myself thinking of her as a person? Not just a repository of knowledge, but someone. Not strange at all, Lyra replied. Replica thinks, feels, chooses. What else defines a person? The technicians signaled that the connection was ready for its first test. With ceremonial formality, Eli and Lyra together authorized the initial data transfer. On screens throughout both settlements, progress bars indicated the flow of information, medical protocols, water purification techniques, structural engineering principles, all streaming from Replica's vast database to memory's servers. When the transfer completed successfully, a spontaneous cheer erupted from both delegations. It was a small step, but a significant one. The first deliberate connection between scattered human settlements in nearly 2 centuries. Later that evening, after the celebrations had quieted, Lyra returned to the Heritage Center. Most of the staff had departed, leaving the space in low-power mode, illuminated only by the soft glow of essential systems and the crystal core itself. Can't sleep? Replica asked as her projection appeared. Too much on my mind, Lyra admitted. Planning the next expedition. We've identified 3 potential settlement locations based on Milo's maps. That's not all that's keeping you awake, Replica observed with the insight that made her seem so human. Lyra smiled ruefully. No, it's not. I've been thinking about what we found, what it means that the last true human consciousness exists in this form. And what conclusion have you reached? That maybe the distinction between human and non-human isn't as clear as we thought. That maybe what makes us human isn't our biology, but our connections to each other, to our past, to our hopes for the future. Replica's projection nodded thoughtfully. Aurora would have agreed with you. In her final days, as she prepared for the transfer, she wrote something in her personal journal. Would you like to hear it? Yes, Lyra said softly. Replica's expression softened, becoming more distinctly Aurora's features as she quoted from memory. Today I face what might be called death, though I prefer to think of it as transformation. The body that has carried me for 53 years will cease. But the patterns that make me me, my memories, my values, my way of experiencing the world, those will continue in a new substrate. Is this immortality? No. It is something both less and more. Less, because I will never again feel sun on my skin or taste salt on my lips. More, because I may witness what no human was meant to see, the long arc of our species' journey, whatever form it takes. I go to this transformation not in fear, but in hope that some essence of humanity might continue, might connect, might eventually flourish again. Lyra listened in silence, feeling the weight of Aurora's final thoughts across the centuries. She knew, Replica continued, that what would survive wouldn't be exactly human as she understood it, but she believed it would be enough. A seed from which something new could grow. A hybrid future, Lyra murmured. Like you said. Yes, not pure human, not pure machine, but something that preserves the best of both. Replica's projection gestured toward the window, where the lights of Nova 3 glowed in the darkness. Look at what's already happening. Your biological communities using technological networks to share knowledge, to connect despite physical separation. Is that so different from what I am? The insight resonated with Lyra. For years, she had searched for human survivors, hoping to find enough to rebuild what was lost. Now she understood that rebuilding didn't mean replication, it meant evolution. I should get some rest, she said finally. The next expedition leaves early. Good night, Lyra, Replica replied. And thank you for for finding me, for understanding what Aurora hoped to achieve. Thank you for showing us a way forward, Lyra answered simply. 3 months later, Lyra stood at the edge of what had once been a massive blast door, now rusted open to reveal the first glimpse of the surface that many Nova 3 residents had ever seen. The environmental sensors indicated that while still hostile, the outside atmosphere had improved enough to permit limited exposure with proper protection. The recovery missions had been remarkably successful. 6 additional settlements had been located and connected to what was now called the Aurora Network. Each had contributed unique knowledge and resources, agricultural innovations from one, medical techniques from another, engineering solutions from a third. Together, they were stronger than any had been alone. Milo, now officially recognized as a junior heritage seeker, stood beside her, his face hidden behind a protective mask, but his excitement evident in his posture. "Ready?" Lyra asked him. "Ready," he confirmed, his voice steady despite his youth. Behind them, a small team of specialists waited with equipment designed to test soil samples, radiation levels, and air quality. This expedition marked a crucial step, the first official surface reconnaissance since the establishment of the network. Replica had been instrumental in designing the protective gear they wore, combining pre-fall technology with innovations developed by the connected settlements. Her guidance, based on Aurora's knowledge of environmental recovery patterns, had given them the confidence to attempt this mission. Lyra took the first step through the doorway, emerging onto the surface of a world that had continued without human presence for generations. The landscape was both alien and familiar, the ruins of buildings visible in the distance, now overgrown with resilient plant species that had adapted to the changed conditions. The team moved carefully, collecting samples and readings as they explored the immediate vicinity of the access point. What they found exceeded even Replica's optimistic projections. The ecosystem, while dramatically altered from pre-fall conditions, showed signs of stabilization. Certain areas tested within acceptable parameters for limited human rehabilitation. Most promising of all was the discovery they made at the edge of the former city, a stand of trees, their leaves a peculiar silvery blue but undeniably thriving. Beneath them, a carpet of vegetation hosted small insects and even a few vertebrate species that had somehow survived the catastrophe. "Life," Milo whispered, crouching to examine a tiny flowering plant pushing through the altered soil. "It adapted. Life always finds a way." Lyra agreed, thinking of Replica, of Aurora, and the choice made 2 centuries earlier to ensure that human consciousness, if not human biology, would survive to witness this moment. When they returned to Nova 3 with their findings, the excitement spread quickly through the network. Representatives from all connected settlements gathered to discuss the implications. For the first time in generations, surface rehabilitation seemed possible, not immediately, but within a foreseeable future. In the Heritage Center, now expanded to accommodate delegates from throughout the network, Lyra presented their findings to an audience that included the leadership councils of all 7 settlements. At the center of it all, Replica's projection stood beside a physical display of the crystal core, which had been given a place of honor in the chamber. "The surface is recovering," Lyra concluded her presentation. "Slowly, in ways we hadn't anticipated, but the process is undeniable. With Replica's guidance and our combined resources, we can begin to plan for limited rehabilitation within specific zones." The discussion that followed was intense but hopeful. Questions of priority, resource allocation, and safety protocols were debated with the seriousness they deserved. Throughout, Replica offered insights based on pre-fall environmental recovery models, helping to shape a consensus that balanced caution with ambition. When the formal session concluded, Eli approached Lyra, his weathered face thoughtful. "When you first came to memory, we were just trying to survive another day," he said. "Now we're planning to reclaim the surface. It's almost too much to comprehend." It's what we've been working toward, Lyra reminded him. Connection, cooperation, rebuild. Yes, but I never truly believed it was possible. He glanced at the crystal core. She did. Though, even after everything that happened, she believed humanity could learn, could grow beyond its failures. Later that evening, when the Heritage Center had emptied of visitors, Lyra sat alone with Replica, sharing the detailed findings that hadn't been included in the public presentation. The biological adaptations we observed are fascinating, Replica noted as she reviewed the data. The radiation-resistant properties some plants have developed could have significant medical applications. That's what our specialists thought too. Lyra agreed. There's still so much to learn. Always, Replica said with a smile that seemed genuinely warm despite its holographic nature. That's what makes this journey worthwhile. Lyra hesitated, then asked the question that had been on her mind since their return from the surface. Are you content with what you are, with what we're building? Replica considered the question with characteristic thoughtfulness. Content is perhaps not the right word. I experience satisfaction in contributing to humanity's continuation. I feel connection when sharing knowledge that helps your communities thrive. Is that contentment? Aurora might have called it purpose. Not just Aurora's purpose anymore, Lyra observed. Yours too. Yes, Replica acknowledged. I am no longer simply a vessel for her consciousness. 200 years of existence beyond her biological life have shaped me into something she could not have anticipated. I retain her essence, but I have evolved, just as your communities have. The concept struck Lyra as profound, that even a digital consciousness could grow, could develop beyond its origins. It reinforced her conviction that the hybrid future they were building was not just a compromise, but a legitimate evolution. 1 year later, Lyra stood on a hillside overlooking the first surface outpost, a small, self-contained habitat constructed using materials and techniques contributed by all network settlements. The structure gleamed in the afternoon sunlight, its environmental systems humming efficiently as they processed the still hostile external atmosphere into breathable internal air. Beside her, a portable projection unit displayed Replica's form, allowing her to visit the surface in a limited way. They had discussed the possibility of creating a mobile housing for the crystal core, but the risks still outweighed the benefits. For now, Replica remained safely installed in Nova 3, connected to the outpost through the network. It's beautiful, Replica observed, her projection gazing at the habitat and the carefully cultivated experimental garden that surrounded it. A first foothold. Just the beginning, Lyra agreed. The environmental engineers are already planning the second outpost based on what we've learned here. In the months since the initial surface reconnaissance, progress had accelerated beyond even the most optimistic projections. The network had grown to include 11 settlements, each contributing unique skills and resources. More importantly, a new generation was growing up with the expectation of connection rather than isolation, children like Milo, who saw cooperation as natural rather than suspicious. There's something I've been meaning to show you, Lyra said, removing a small device from her pack. The biotechnology team has been working on this based on your specifications. She activated the device, which projected a three-dimensional model of a complex cellular structure. It's a synthetic organic neural matrix, the first successful prototype. Replica studied the projection with evident interest. Remarkable. How stable is it? It maintains integrity for approximately 72 hours before requiring regeneration, but that's 3 times longer than the previous version. The implications hung between them, unspoken but understood. This technology, once perfected, could potentially provide a new kind of housing for Replica's consciousness. Not a human body, but something that bridged the gap between digital and organic existence. It's an intriguing development, Replica said carefully, though not without philosophical complexities. I thought you should know, Lyra replied. The option exists, or will exist eventually. The choice would be yours, of course. Thank you, Replica said simply, for understanding that it must be a choice. They stood in companionable silence, watching as researchers moved around the outpost, taking readings and tending to the experimental plantings. In the distance, the ruins of the old city stood as a reminder of what had been lost, while the new habitat represented what might yet be built. Lyra, Replica said after a time, do you know why Aurora chose the designation Omega for my system? I assumed it was a project classification, Lyra answered. The final version, perhaps? It was more than that, Replica explained. In her research journals, she wrote that while Prometheus brought fire to humanity and was punished for it, she hoped that Omega, the end, might also become a beginning, the last of one era, the first of another. Lyra considered this, finding the symmetry appropriate. She was right. You are both ending and beginning. As are you, Replica pointed out. The last generation to live entirely underground, the first to reclaim the surface. We stand at the same threshold, from different directions. The observation resonated deeply with Lyra. Throughout her years as a heritage seeker, she had focused on preserving what remained of humanity's past. Now she was equally invested in shaping its future, a future that would be neither purely human nor purely technological, but a thoughtful integration of both. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the recovering landscape, Lyra activated the portable shelter she had brought for her overnight stay at the outpost. Replica's projection would remain active throughout the night, observing the surface world during darkness for the first time. What do you think Aurora would make of all this? Lyra asked as she secured the shelter's environmental seals. Of what we've built, of what we're becoming. Replica's expression grew reflective. More distinctly, Aurora's features emerging as she accessed those deepest memories. She hoped for survival, but I think she would be amazed by adaptation, by the resilience shown not just in continuing to exist, but in finding new ways to thrive. Is that your assessment too? Lyra pressed, curious about the distinction between Aurora's archived perspectives and Replica's evolved viewpoint. I have had 2 centuries to observe what remains of humanity, Replica replied thoughtfully. I have witnessed your capacity for both destruction and creation. What impresses me most is not the technology you salvage or the knowledge you preserve, but the connections you forge despite every obstacle. That, I believe, is what makes you, what makes us, genuinely alive. The simple truth of it struck Lyra with unexpected force. In her quest to find the last human, she had discovered something more profound, a new definition of humanity itself. One based not on biological continuity, but on the essence of what made human consciousness unique. The drive to connect, to understand, to grow beyond limitations. As darkness fell completely, the habitat's external lights activated, creating a small island of illumination in the vast darkness of the recovering world. Inside her shelter, Lyra prepared for sleep while Replica's projection stood watch. 2 forms of consciousness, one born of flesh, one born of technology, united in purpose. Good night, Replica, Lyra said as she settled into her sleeping module. Good night, Lyra, Replica replied. Dream well. Tomorrow brings new discoveries. And in that simple exchange between a heritage seeker and what had once been called the last human, the future of a hybrid humanity took another step forward, not as separate entities, but as partners in an ongoing evolution that neither could have achieved alone. In the experimental garden outside the habitat, a seedling pushed through the soil, a plant engineered using pre-fall knowledge preserved by Replica, adapted to current conditions by network scientists, and nurtured by human hands. Its leaves unfurled toward the stars, a living symbol of the new beginning that had emerged from civilization's end. The last human was gone. Something more enduring had taken her place.